All right, welcome back, everyone. It's just a little over a day before BAFTA nominations are announced in the very wee hours of at least a lot of us here in the U.S. So I'm going to go ahead. We'll get predictions out of the way here today, and we'll come back on Wednesday, of course, and we'll get a little bit of a taste to see, okay, how well did I do, especially in some of these categories, like I said, that a few websites have not really thrown a lot of conjecture at as far as what they expect to be nominated. So this will be fun. So that being said, one other thing, of course, we do have to mention, it was announced earlier today that once again, the Oscars are going to delay their Oscar nomination announcements. It is now scheduled for 10 days from today. That's Thursday the 23rd. And I think largely the reason for this is because obviously the air quality and stuff in the immediate LA area and its immediate surroundings and stuff, it's still not great. We have seen that a lot of major sports, both for college and for professional, if you have anything housed in LA, with the exception, of course, tonight of the NFL game, that was kind of big news. I was kind of following that a little bit. Also to see, what other events are happening. But some of the other stuff, like we had, I think it was the USC women's basketball team. They had a home game last night. Looked like the crowd was full of people and everything. So it's not like I was like, thank God it's not a COVID situation all over again. Because watching some of those sporting events when it's like, okay, there's only like 3 people allowed in the crowd or whatever. It's like, oh, those were so bad. It's just not fond memories of that. So I was glad that they've got that going. Now, obviously, there's a big difference though between big public screenings for movies and for your consideration screenings and everything, and some of the last stuff that they're allowed to do here leading up to the nominations announcement. With that, we can't forget too that some of the people that are campaigning in this, whether it's on screen or off screen, in other words, in front of the camera or behind the camera. A lot of these folks might have issues that, like, say, younger athletes or even professional athletes in their 20s, 30s, they or even some of them in their 40s, they might not have. So that's like breathing issues and lung issues and other medical history, where being in that air quality is just not the best idea. That's probably my first explanation for a lot of this, because largely. Outside of PGA, WGA, BAFTA, which BAFTA is obviously not, entirely based, of course, out of the States, so makes sense that they're not pushing anything back yet. If they do last minute here, I'd be very surprised. But I'm trying to think who else, because DGA announced theirs. PGA, which was supposed to be yesterday, they've postponed again. Off the top of my head, I can't remember. Did they give another date on that, or did they just say it's going to be later? I think they just said it's going to be later, but. We're down to just a few left, so I, outside of, some more major catastrophes where, like, something even worse happens, I don't really see a reason past the 23rd, as long as the air quality, continues to improve. It's improved. It's obviously not to a entirely safe level for everyone just yet, but, as long as that continues to move the right direction, I really don't see how the Oscars can just keep postponing this and everything. I think they'll figure out a way to do it, whether it's, more remote or how they want to do it. I hope to, if worst comes to worst, just do what SAG did, just do a press release instead, which, it's not, it's can be a little more fun live to just kind of read through the various categories and then figure out, oh, okay, this is, because typically I would guess, again, it would start with your Best Picture nominees and move its way down to some of the tech categories and so on. So it'd be kind of weird to see, oh, okay, that makes sense now why this one didn't make it for Best Picture or something. Or it's like, what? This one got this, but it didn't get Best Picture, and so on and so forth. That could be fun too, but it's like, you know what? At this rate, I think they've got to start having those conversations just so we can get this damn thing over with all this damn conjecture. Anyways, and it's also not cool that it's like you keep making plans where it's like, for me, I always consider Oscars nominations morning as like a major holiday. Like, it's a day where if I can get the day off from work, then I do. If it's a day where, if I can spend that extra time to talk about what's going on, then sure, I'd love to do it. And kind of, just take the day and just kind of enjoy it. But, if you keep moving it over and over again, that just becomes tough. And it gets tough on our end for prognosticating this and trying to predict this stuff, where it's like, okay, how much of this possibly is affecting some votes? What movie, like A Complete Unknown, which really was peaking leading up to the first band of nominations now, is that movie going to stay as popular now with an extra almost week for the voters to sit and stew and maybe find another late upcomer? So, that's also something that I really, it was going to be tough anyways, and I'm kind of glad. The first one I was, very understanding of, and this one I'm still understanding of, but anymore I'll be a little more like, okay, guys, you're just dragging this out. And we need to start looking, and not that I'm part of the Academy, of course, and I'm, all that, but it's like, if they push it again, I'm like, okay, at this point, I'm like, we got to start figuring out another solution to this. We can't just keep postponing this over and over again. Anyhow, so not to get on too much of a soapbox there, but it's like, I kind of didn't mind that first one, though, because BAFTA was only going to be 2 days, technically less than 2 days, between when they announced their nominees and when the Oscars announced their nominees. So it's like, it was going to be a really tight last-second scramble to throw some in. Now we'll have a little bit more time to think about it, true, but at the same time, like I said, now it's like, okay, if something was hot off of BAFTA, does that mean all the voters are now, with the extra time, going to just flow right to them to the point where it's like, we'll just copy over the BAFTA nominees, -1 in the acting categories, and then just go from there? We'll see. We'll definitely find out. So without further delay, let's go ahead and talk, though, about the BAFTA nomination predictions for what I have right now. Especially, again, in these tech categories, I'm just kind of picking the 5 that I think will get in, and I'll list a few alternates that could be nominated. We'll see how I do. So, Best Sound. My 5 here, and I'm going, by the way, this is, I believe, reverse alphabetical order is how it was listed at BAFTA until we get to the casting category, animated feature, film not in the English language. Those ones will kind of go a different route there. So in reverse order alphabetically, the last one they listed there was Best Sound. So starting there, I have A Complete Unknown, Blitz, Dune Part 2, Emilia Perez, and Wicked being my 5 here. Which I do think a movie like Blitz, I'm really thinking this is going to be the best sign we've seen of it so far because of the British director, largely British cast, British setting. I do think this is one. I don't think it's going to dominate BAFTA by any means. I have it down for. I guess we'll give a minor spoiler here. I have it down for 5 nominations. So I think it'll do okay. How many of those are going to carry over to the Oscars? Time will only tell. But I think it's a movie that, again, will fare better here than anywhere else. But yeah, Complete Unknown, Dune Part 2, Emilia Perez, Wicked. I have all 4 of those at the Oscars as well. Gladiator 2 is my 5th one. I have that as one of the first alternates here. And then Conclave, I think. Actually, Conclave arguably could do better here at BAFTA than it does at the Oscars, depending on a couple things. Like, it didn't shortlist in the sound category as an example here. So that's one where it's like, okay, it's not going to be nominated here at the Oscars, but it could be nominated here at BAFTA, and therefore just that one nomination could make the big difference. Next up is, they have it titled Best Special Visual Effects, so in other words, Best Visual Effects. My 5 here are Better Man, Dune Part 2, Gladiator 2, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and Wicked. The one that I switched out here for my Oscar predictions, Alien Romulus, I put in the last couple weeks for visual effects. I switched that out for Better Man. Better Man, it did shortlist at the Oscars, so of course it's very possible there. The only thing, of course, now one thing, kind of minor, I don't think it's, the biggest tell-all, but the film is one of the biggest flops I can think of for a movie in over 1,000 theaters in recent memory. Outside of maybe like the Y2K movie, that one didn't make very much money either when it went wide. But Better Man really did not carry over. There was not a lot of attractor viewers to that one. It just didn't take off at the box office so far. It could fare better here at BAFTA, though, because now Robbie Williams, I believe, is, if he's not British, he's Australian, one of the two. I've read a couple different things about his heritage. But again, I feel like this is one that could do a little better at BAFTA. And he's, I believe, a bigger sensation over in the UK as well as a singer. So I think that will also affect it. So I have that one easily getting in there over something like Alien Romulus, which is still possible. But the other 4, I'd be a little shocked if any one of them fell out, with the exception of maybe Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, because that one, while it did well internationally, it's obviously not to the same level as the previous 3 films. The critics' ratings, box office, virtually everything was a little downgraded from the last few films. I still think, the effects are still very good, though, and I think they'll still be able to be, they'll still get in, is my prediction. But if, they include Better Man and want to include Alien Romulus or one of the other 2 that I'll name here, it wouldn't completely shock me. Deadpool and Wolverine and Furiosa, Mad Max Saga are my other two. Both of those, again, fared a little better at the international box office. Deadpool and Wolverine obviously was a big hit here in the U.S., but Furiosa kind of had, a very, very disappointing result here in the States. But yeah, those two I can see as also stealing a spot there. Next up is the production design category. My 5 here are Blitz, Conclave, Dune Part 2, The Brutalist, and Wicked. So in this case, I don't have Blitz at the Oscars, and I just took out Dune Part 2 at the Oscars, but I have that in place of that. I have Nosferatu and Beetlejuice, both of which are possible. I think Nosferatu, we're starting to see more figures coming in from international, and it's doing pretty well in its international runs there. Kind of being set in Germany and stuff, I can understand, obviously, UK or Europe-based audiences, rather. Definitely liking that one. Nosferatu also does have quite a few British actors in it, so that also, I think, benefits the movie. And it's one, I think, Robert Eggers in his history here, I'm trying to remember, The Lighthouse at least got nominated for cinematography, did it not, at BAFTA? And then I'm going to double-check here to see if I got anything else. I thought I got at least cinematography there. Yep, just cinematography. I was like, maybe if Willem Dafoe snuck in, but that was before they switched it to 6 nominees. Otherwise, Gladiator 2, I think, also stands a shot at landing a nomination here at BAFTA for its production design, but that's my thoughts there. For original score, I have Blitz, Conclave, Emilia Perez, The Brutalist, and The Substance getting in, with Nosferatu and The Wild Robot being outside of my nominees there. So I'm switching out. I have The Substance not making it at the Oscars, and I have The Wild Robot getting in instead. And let me triple check one thing. I didn't. This one I didn't remember off the top of my head. Did The Substance make it in for the shortlist for score, or am I? Because all of a sudden I'm looking at it again. I'm like, I don't think that one made the shortlist even for its score. Let me find that list here. Hang on. It did not. Yeah, so that's one we know cannot repeat at the Oscars, is The Substance for score. But it did long list here at BAFTA, and I think The Substance, it's going to do pretty well here at BAFTA. I don't think it's, without giving anything away, I don't think it's going to win, be in the hunt for most nominations or anything, but I think it'll do pretty okay over here. Wild Robot, though, I do have in at the Oscars in place of The Substance. Blitz, I'm hanging on to that one for score right now. Depending on how it does, and if it really can do better in some of these tech categories than it could fare at the Oscars, then we'll see. But, yeah, this is one Hans Zimmer, I think, will get in. For makeup and hairstyling, or just makeup and hair as it's listed here at BAFTA, I have Beetlejuice, Dune Part 2, The Apprentice, The Substance, and Wicked being my 5. So I'm just leaving out Emilia Perez. I think Emilia Perez can get that Oscar nomination. It's going to be very close. Nosferatu I have also just on the outskirts here in place of The Apprentice and Dune Part 2. Those two, I did take Dune Part 2 out of the Oscar predictions here recently. The Apprentice, actually, a few months ago I had in for hair and makeup at the Oscars, but no, I switched that one out. I think The Apprentice getting that film long list and stuff for support for Sebastian Stan and Jeremy Strong and stuff. I think The Apprentice, again, I don't know how it's going to do at the Oscars right now. Sebastian Stan really needs to jump Daniel Craig to get back into the Oscar discussion, and even then, I think the only way that could happen is if Daniel Craig, for whatever reason, ends up missing here at BAFTA. That would be huge. That would be like, oh, okay, you got a British-born actor who is not nominated at BAFTA with 6 slots. Then we know maybe there is some trouble there where, he got in at SAG over Sebastian Stan, but maybe there's just not quite enough love for that movie over there and stuff, which Queer didn't do particularly well here at BAFTA. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it only was longlisted for Best Actor versus The Apprentice. That's longlisted for film and for quite a few other categories there. So we'll see. But yeah, that being said, it is 6 slots too. So when we get to Best Actor and Supporting Actor and stuff, we'll cover more of that later. Let's move on, though, to editing. Best editing. No film in front of it like they do at the Oscars as far as the title of the category. My 5 here are Anora, Challengers, Conclave, Dune Part 2, and Emilia Perez. And I think at the Oscars, I've got 4 out of these 5. let's see, I don't have challengers in. It's The Brutalist, which for whatever reason did not long list here. Again, it was also missing kind of suspiciously from Ace Eddie. But I really don't think that one's going to miss for film editing at the Oscars. It feels a little off to me that it would, being such a long movie. And as we've seen in recent years, the longer your movie is, the more likely it is to get in for film editing, typically, because it's typically more editing when you've got more film to base it off of. I think The Branch has been particularly more cognizant of that here in the last few years. We've seen like The Irishman get in, and Killers of the Flower Moon last year, Oppenheimer get in. Obviously, that's not the only thing, because they're working with popular directors that typically their movies do get in for that category. That is true. And Brady doesn't have, Brady Corbett, the director of The Brutalist, doesn't really have that track record yet. But I don't know. It just feels weird to leave that one off to me. Otherwise, the other three that I think could break in here are A Complete Unknown. If that one does overall do a little better than we're expecting here at BAFTA, this could be a category it sneaks into. The Substance, again, if it's one that fares pretty well at BAFTA, film editing could go along for the ride. And then Kneecap. Kneecap is one that did do pretty well here at BAFTA. Obviously, it's going to be more competitive over here being an Irish film. But, long listing here in editing is a big sign that, yeah, it is probably one that will have more general support than it obviously will at the Oscars, where it's really probably only going to play for international feature. Costume design is next. That's going to be Blitz, Conclave, Dune Part 2, Nosferatu, and Wicked. Those are my 5. I'm leaving out Beetlejuice here, but I expect that one to get back in at the Oscars in place of Blitz. And then Gladiator 2, I think, is also in play here. Now, this is one spot, Conclave. I think it can still make it at the Oscars in this category. I'm not, especially planning on it. Maria is one I have in at the Oscars for now, though, in place of it. So this is one, I think the whole love for Conclave, I think, can take over, and they can just kind of list it in these categories, as we've seen happen with a few other Oscar contenders over the years. So that's my thoughts there. Cinematography is next. My 5 here are Conclave, Dune Part 2, Emilia Perez, The Brutalist, and Nosferatu. I feel pretty good about these, and I believe I have these same 5 at the Oscars as well, last I checked. Gladiator 2 and The Substance are my other 2 that could break in, but I feel like these 5 feel pretty solid, especially with Nickel Boys not long listing here. That's the only one that I think a lot of people could switch out at the Oscars, is to go with Nickel Boys. But again, just based on its overall performance here, I'm not sure if that love, plus the Cinematographers Guild, who also have not announced their nominees, at least not as of today that I've seen. They're also ones I'm really waiting to see if they do end up picking Nickel Boys. If they do, okay, that might shift my influence a little bit there, and I might see who I can cast off from my list, but we'll see. The Casting Award, Best Casting, this is still a relatively new category, but I'm just going to go with 5 films that are kind of popular. All 5 of them made the long list for Best Film. So I'm going to go with A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Emilia Perez, The Brutalist, and Wicked. I was really close to putting Anora in here, especially since it did make the SAG Ensemble nomination. I think it's close. And even though, we have seen before films like The Two Popes, which is a very small ensemble, that made it in for Best Casting, and I believe, was that the inaugural year or maybe the second year they had this category at BAFTA? Really wasn't that long ago. And of course, this is a category that will carry over next year at the Oscars and be their first new category in quite a few years. Otherwise, Kneecap, I think, actually does stand a little bit of a shot at breaking in here and getting a nomination. We'll see. Next up here is film not in the English language. My 5 here are All We Imagine Is Light, Emilia Perez, I'm Still Here, Kneecap, and The Seed of the Sacred Fig. I'm leaving out Flow. Flow, I think, is close here for a nomination. Typically, from what I recall looking at the list here, I don't think BAFTA goes crazy for animated features crossing over into films not in the English language. I'll have to double check here, because what was... best film not in English language. I was going to check here. What was the one we had a couple of years ago that got into doc feature, animated feature, and international feature at the Oscars? I'll try to find it here. Because it was only a few years ago, as I recall. Hang on. I'll find it here. Let's see. Whoops, I think I went too far here. Was it Flea? That sounds right. Yep, animated feature, international feature, doc feature, Flea. Yeah. And that was 2021, which BAFTA, and possible it is possible that they didn't longlist it either, or it wasn't eligible. So Flea was not a nominee there. So it's typically it's something that we've seen the Academy be a little more open to over the past years. I do expect Flo to be nominated for both animated feature and international feature when we do get to the Oscars. So I think it's one that they're going to leave out, and instead something like Seed of the Sacred Fig, which is a little more popular. Obviously, All We Imagine Is Light, which was eligible here at BAFTA. That one I think will get in. The other three are still fairly popular. The Girl with the Needle is the only other one that I will list as a possible nominee here. For Best Animated Feature, only 4 nominees in this category. Here I'm picking Flo, Inside Out 2, Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul, and The Wild Robot. With 3 possible exceptions here, Memoir of a Snail, which I think does get that 5th nomination at the Oscars, Moana 2, and Despicable Me 4. We do see sometimes that BAFTA will go a little more populist in this category, which the Globes kind of used to do. The Globes have kind of gone more more international and more low budget and more independent animated features, with 6 nominees now in those categories. That one, now they've kind of opened themselves up. Before it was just kind of stick 5 of the most popular movies in there that were animated, and there was your list. With the exception of if there was like an Anomalisa or like one of those smaller movies that everyone kind of knew was going to get nominated for animated feature, they would throw those in occasionally too, but usually only for one slot. Now moving on to the screenplay categories. My 5 for adapted screenplay are A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Dune Part 2, Emilia Perez, and Nickel Boys. So Nickel Boys, it's only longlisted here in this category, but I'm reminded of last year. American Fiction also was only longlisted in this category. BAFTA just didn't really love the movie. And after it kind of, and this was before the Oscar nominations were out, American Fiction was still doing pretty well, getting a good number of Globe nominations, Critics' Choice nominations and stuff, and everything. Good performance at SAG as well. So it was kind of weird that they only liked it in that one category. So I remember predicting it wouldn't get in. It ended up getting in and winning the category. So I'm reminded of that. So I'm putting Nickel Boys in as one of the 5. I'm leaving out Wicked, which I don't think it's, again, especially strong threat still for screenplay. But hey, I said that 2 years ago about Top Gun Maverick, and it happened to get in. So don't just be careful there. The Outrun, I think, has a small shot of getting in. It's one that I think will do better in like Best British Film as an example. And then Sing Sing, even though Sing Sing was long listed in more categories than something like Nickel Boys, obviously, I just don't sense a ton of passion from BAFTA on the movie, so I have that one out for the moment. For original screenplay, my 5 here are A Real Pain, All We Imagine Is Light, Anora, The Brutalist, and The Substance being my 5. I'm leaving out Kneecap, which again, we'll do a little better here, but I think it's a possible contender. And then Challengers, which could sneak in. That's another one at the Oscars. It might not end up getting nominated for its score or its song or its editing, and it could just play in screenplay only, and it could sneak into that category. It was a little interesting to see Hard Truths not longlisted here at BAFTA, even though it was longlisted in a few other categories. So with one slot open there, I do have Hard Truths getting in at the Oscars, though. One key thing here I will say, if All We Imagine Is Light does get in here and it gets the other nominations that I'm predicting it for, I could be persuaded. Again, this is going to be a thing where now we have an even longer delay. It's starting to make me think, is that director nomination possible for this movie? And then also on top of that, then, would they also fit it in as one of the 10 best films of the year, which again, I think we've seen that happen. If that does happen, which is it kicking out A Real Pain? Is it kicking out Sing Sing? Is it kicking out one of those other movies for Best Picture? We'll have to see. But a performance, getting into some of these key categories here at BAFTA, I think will definitely be a big sign of whether or not that's coming up on the horizon there at the Oscars. For supporting actress, 6 nominees here. My 6 are Selena Gomez for Emilia Perez, Ariana Grande for Wicked, Felicity Jones for The Brutalist, Margaret Qualley for The Substance, Isabella Rossellini for Conclave, and Zoe Saldana for Emilia Perez. Now, Emilia Perez also has another possible nominee here in supporting actress, so that's why I'm a little more inclined to put Selena back in. if it had just been 5, or if it had only if only her and Zoe had gotten longlisted, I could have been tempted to keep Selena out. But I think this one, it played a little longer in theaters over in international markets, did Emilia Perez. So I think it's one that I think they'll be willing to put Selena in. We'll have to see. My other two are Michelle Austin, who I'm really afraid is going to get nominated here. I'm not going to predict it. She's a supporting actress in Hard Truths. Again, that one did miss screenplay, though, so that was a little odd that they like it in certain categories, like the acting categories, but like screenplay, where Mike Leigh is kind of a legend, and typically he'll do better in that category, at a lot of the major award shows, not just BAFTA. Weird that they leave his screenplay out, though. And the other one would be, of course, Jamie Lee Curtis for The Last Showgirl. I think this is a thing where if she gets in here over a Selena Gomez, over a Felicity Jones, over a Margaret Qualley, getting the SAG nomination last week, too, I think that does show, okay, maybe Jamie Lee can stick around. And in a category that's only 5 at the Oscars, maybe. And don't forget, Last Showgirl, that is one that is showing up late. It did get the 2 SAG nominations kind of later in the season here, and now we have those extra days. More people are watching that movie. So is that another one where it's like, okay, it's probably not going to play for much else other than supporting actress and lead actress for Pamela Anderson, who is not long listed here at BAFTA. But is that a possible last-second switch where it's like, okay, maybe we need to make room for Pam Anderson and or Jamie Lee Curtis? Supporting actor. My 6 here are Yora Borisov for Anora, Kieran Culkin for Real Pain, Clarence Macklin for Sing Sing, Edward Norton for A Complete Unknown, Guy Pearce for The Brutalist, and Jeremy Strong for The Apprentice. So even though I just talked about Sing Sing not being as popular over here and stuff, yet I'm putting it in for supporting actor, I just think there's not going to be enough love for the other 4 actors who are longlisted here. Stanley Tucci for Conclave, he hasn't shown up anywhere. Even though I've had him kind of in and out of my predictions for pretty much since the start of the season, I still think he's on that trajectory where he's going to miss everything and then could show up at the Oscars. Mark Edelstein for Anora is the other one I will list here as a possible nominee. Forget about Denzel. He's just never, ever nominated here at BAFTA. So just if you're predicting him on any of these sites, go ahead and drop him. I promise you he's not getting in. I would be shocked just to the point of every possible thing if he does happen to get in for this when he's been looked over from virtually every other performance he's ever given. And then the only other one who's longlisted, of course, is Harris Dickinson for Baby Girl. And I don't know if Nicole Kidman's a guarantee in Best Actress, and that's the next category, of course. So we'll find out if I put her in or not. But I just think, again, with this, it's like I think there's just enough room for someone like a Clarence Macklin to make it in. Even if the movie doesn't have the best support, I think this is one where he can make it. In Best Actress, I do have Cynthia Erivo for Wicked, Carla Sofia Gascon for Emilia Perez, Marianne Jean-Baptiste for Hard Truths, Mikey Madison for Anora, Demi Moore for The Substance, and Kate Winslet in for Lee. I'm leaving out Nicole Kidman for Baby Girl, and I want to say Saoirse Ronan for The Outrun also stands something of an outside shot of getting back in. She was one I know a lot of people, including myself, had back in like September for Best Actress. The movie has just not gotten any traction. It's not landed any other major awards. This would be the only one. It is up for like Best British Film and a couple other things here and there at BAFTA as far as its long list, but I just don't think there's a lot of enthusiasm for the movie. Best Actor, my 6 are Adrian Brody for The Brutalist, Timothée Chalamet for A Complete Unknown, Daniel Craig for Queer, Coleman Domingo for Sing Sing, Ralph Fiennes for Conclave, and Sebastian Stan for The Apprentice. Those are my 6. I'll leave out Hugh Grant for Heretic, even though he is British. I don't think Heretic is quite their movie. Again, looking through, I don't believe I saw it longlisted for anything else. And then a possible one is a previous BAFTA winner, Dev Patel for Monkey Man. I don't think it's going to happen. They typically wouldn't go for like an action performance, especially when paired up with like a lot of the other contemporaries here from this year. I just don't think so. Next up is the Best Director nominees, I should say, 6 in this category. I've got Jacques Audiard for Emilia Perez, Sean Baker for Anora, Edward Berger for Conclave, Brady Corbett for The Brutalist, Coralie Fairjet for The Substance, and Payal Kapadia for All We Imagine as Light. Those are my 6. I'm leaving out Denis Villeneuve for Dune Part 2, even though I think his movie is going to do very well here in the tech categories. He was left off the list here 3 years ago for the original Dune as well. And then Ellen Krauss for Lee, I think, is another possible female director we need to consider here. Don't forget that half the long list here for Best Director were female directors. So I would say probably it's a good bet that at least 2 get in. And as we've seen, the 2 that have more traction in the Oscar race are Payal and Coralie. So I think that's going to be the lineup there at BAFTA. 2 categories left. Best British Film. I have 10. You have 10 nominees here. My 10 are Blitz, Civil War, Conclave, Gladiator 2, Hard Truths, Kneecap, Lee, The Outrun, Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul, and We Live in Time. I'm leaving out Bird, Paddington in Peru, and Back to Black as other possible contenders here. But yeah, I feel pretty solid with my 10 here. All of them more or less have multiple spots where they were long-listed, We Live in Time being an exception. Bird didn't get a lot of other support. It's kind of a little smaller independent film. Paddington in Peru, it could make it in just because of the name, because it is Paddington attached. And of course, Back to Black was the, was that Winehouse biopic? That one did long list in Best Actress as well. So, possible, and I at one point was thinking that could get in, but I think with 10, I think they will go with those 10. And then for Best Film, only 5 nominees here. I've got Anora, Conclave, Emilia Perez, The Brutalist, and The Substance being my 5, leaving out A Complete Unknown, which I think is going to be close, Wicked, which I think is going to be close, and Dune Part 2, which I think with its big technical support could get back in. I'm not really keen on something like Kneecap getting in for Best Film. I don't think they want to double dip and give it both Best British Film and Best Picture, or in this case, Best Film. Conclave, I think they'd be willing to do it in, but not necessarily for something like Kneecap. All right. So overall, I have a tie for Conclave and Emilia Perez, which were the 2 that were long-listed in the most categories. Makes sense that they would tie here as well for most nominations. I have both of them getting 12. I have The Brutalist getting 10, and then I think the most I have after that is Wicked. I have that one getting 8. I have The Substance getting 7. Anora getting 6. I've got Dune Part 2 also getting 8, by the way. These are, I can't remember why I put these in this specific order. I didn't list them by most to least or anything. Again, I mentioned Blitz getting 5. A Complete Unknown I have getting 5. So maybe not faring as well as it might end up at the Oscars, but we'll see. Let's see. Otherwise, I've got like The Apprentice down for 3. All We Imagine Is Light getting 3. And I think at the Oscars, it can get 3. You have to sub out, though. It's not eligible for an international feature. You might have to sub out Best Picture. Maybe that is within its sights now, I think. It's possible, definitely, with this longer delayed thing. This allows the latecomers who have not seen All We Imagine Is Light to catch up with the movie now. And it allows that film, especially if it does come out here at BAFTA and gets quite a few of these nominations, gets the 3 I have it down for. And I don't remember, is it long-listed anywhere else that I didn't put it in for? I don't believe so. Yeah, it's I've got it down for all 3 of the categories that it was long-listed in, so it can't overperform that. So, yeah, so if it gets all 3 of those, boy, that does make me think, okay, do we have to put Payal in for Best Director and kick out one of the other guys? Because I think Coralie, she could replace Coralie as well, though. That's going to be close. The Substance, is it, if we go with those international directors, it could be one or the other. It could be both. It did end up being both last year. I remember I was very much back and forth. I was more open to and more predictive of. Oh geez, we just said her name the other day, and I've already forgotten it again. But the director of Anatomy of a Fall, whose name again has escaped me. It's Justine Triet. It was both Justine Triet and Jonathan Glazer who got in for their international films last year, and I was more predictive, like it's only going to be one, and it ended up being both, and they kicked out who was I think I had Alexander Payne getting in instead of Jonathan Glazer there in director. I had the other 3 though. So it's just going to be okay. Again, does that director's branch want to go with both international ones? Jacques Audiard is also, of course, an international director here with Emilia Perez. So technically, that'd be 3 slots unless he gets kicked out, which would be shocking beyond all belief if his movie ends up. If for what I've got it getting at the Oscars, that it would be 14 nominations, and for the one to miss be Best Director, and it gets 13, that doesn't make sense. I think it would have to miss in some of those other categories. Like, it'd have to miss out on one of the song nominations. It'd have to miss out on makeup. It'd have to miss out on maybe Selena Gomez or something. It'd have to be something like that. I think it'd have to come in and be like, okay, maybe it's not leading nominations, but it's tied for most, or maybe Conclave jumps it just a little bit there. Something like that. But, yeah, there's quite a few things that I think, a few tea leaves that we're going to look forward to from the BAFTA nominations, particularly in the categories that only have 5 nominees. It'll be interesting to see which of those, okay, is it any cases where it's 5 nominees and maybe 1 or 2 are ones that are just not going to repeat at the Oscars because we know the short lists for those categories? Is it going to be maybe something else? It's going to be an interesting development there at BAFTA here in a little over a day. So that's all I got for now. We'll be back on Wednesday. Again, probably a little later in the day, we'll talk about these nominations, how they affect stuff, and we'll see if there's any updates, of course, with all the natural disaster, everything going on out there in the LA area. I don't think it'll, again, I would be surprised if they do push it back anymore. If they do, again, I would say at that rate, it's like you gotta figure out a different plan for how to announce these things, because it's a little, I mean, first world problems, I know, but it's like this little thing of, okay, we're kind of tired of trying to plan on it and then only to figure out in a few, a couple of days later that it's pushed back again and again and again. It's just, a little silly, but, I'm not gonna, get on that soapbox for too long. So we'll be back Wednesday.